Everyone calls themselves half Batman and half Spider-Man because they got no power and no money. And I'm half Spider-Man because I don't work nearly as hard as the Kardashians. So if you want to check out my Spider-Man video, then make sure to do so. Batman 1989 is the first Batman movie, not counting any animated movies or the TV show movie, and it's pretty poo. I guess I should say this right now, but I don't really like old movies. I like some, but a lot of them I'm not a huge fan of, like the Star Wars movies. I do like movies like Shawshank Redemption and Godfather though, so if it has a lot of action and everything, I probably wouldn't like it. And Batman 89 is a really good example. The fights suck, Bruce Wayne sucks, Batman sucks, the suits, whatever, the Joker's meh, and the entire movie is goofy. Now I don't think the suit is bad, but I think they should have made it fit better. Like if you look at the cowl, it looks too big, and his jaw looks 2D almost. Like it's not popping out of the cowl. But other than that, I think the suit is fine. My main issue with the movie is with the movie itself. There's a lot of dumb shit in this movie. Bruce met Vicky once and he feels the need to tell her he's Batman. The Joker is a clout chaser and he wants Vicky to be his maiden. There's no origin story for Batman. Like they don't explain why Bruce became Batman, and the performances are whatever. None of the performances stood out to me, including the Joker. It's hard for me to like this version of the Joker as well, because I grew up with the Arkham Joker and the Dark Knight Joker, and those Jokers set the bar way too high. So when I look at this Joker 3 decades after the movie came out, Nicholson's Joker is okay. And it doesn't have anything to do with the actors, but it's more so the actual movie. And the same thing applies to Vulture as Batwayne. The character's poo, so you can't do a lot performance-wise. And there's also the big thing near the end that I'm pretty sure a lot of people hated, which was Batman killing the Joker. Now, I don't mind having a different interpretation from the comics, but if they're gonna do something as big as having the Batman kill people, they're gonna have to explain why. Instead of just having him do a transformation jutsu and turn into Darth Vader, and have the Joker turn into Palpatine too. But I didn't like this movie. I think Batman 89 is not that good. Batman Returns is also kinda poo. The one good thing about both these movies though is the music. Batman never had a bad theme, and the ones in these movies were solid. But the movie is meh. This time you've got Penguin and Catwoman. Now, this is gonna be another unpopular opinion of mine, but I like Penguin over the Joker. I liked how he was evil Bruce Wayne and everything, but he's just extremely goofy. The goof meter doubles in this movie compared to the first one, because now you've got two villains. Penguin gets raised by North American penguins, and Catwoman dies, and then a bunch of stray cats save her by biting and licking her. Now this movie isn't trying to be very realistic, but I just can't take it very seriously. The Penguin touches Grace for the first time in his life when he's like 30 years old, and he's suddenly running for mayor and he eats raw fish. And Catwoman starts acting like a cat, and she has 9 lives. It is unbelievably goofy and it's just too much for me. I do like this movie more than Batman 89 though, because Penguin's motives don't involve him being a clout chaser. And Batman is an improvement from the first movie because people are wary of him and aren't like, hey, it's the Batman, yay, he's here to save us, he came here to save us, let's go. They're like, can I trust this person, man? But the only issue is that it's in the second movie and not the first movie. But anyway, I think the movie is pretty poo. I'm gonna start adding 0.5s into my score, cause like this movie is slightly better than Batman 89, and I wouldn't say it's on the same level of not that good, and at the same time I wouldn't bump it up to a mediocre. So I'm gonna give Batman Returns a not that good 0.5. Batman Forever. Everyone says this movie is where it starts going downhill and that it's so poo compared to the first two movies, but I don't see it that way. I think this movie is about as bad as the first one. I think Val Kilmer is a good Bruce Wayne and Batman, and his voice is really good. Out of all the actors, he sounds the most like Kevin Conroy. And also the Batsuit looks and fits nice minus the nipples, but since it's not very noticeable, I don't think it's that big of a wet fart. But this movie becomes even goofier than Batman Returns, and they even have those goofy ass sound effects, but it kinda works with this movie. It works with Riddler cause Jim Carrey, but Two-Face is just trash. He barely says anything and he's just a poo Joker. Riddler on the other hand is extremely goofy, but I think it works with him cause he is one of those goofy Batman characters, and since it's Jim Carrey playing this interpretation, I feel like it works. Robin in this movie is whatever, but it's also funny seeing a 20-year-old man getting adopted by Batman, a literal college student. They should have had Lil Baby, but it's whatever. I think Batman Forever is not that good. Now we're at the best movie of all time, Game of Thrones prequel. Now I couldn't tell if they were trying to make an MCU type of movie where they were trying to make a good movie while cracking jokes here and there, or if they were trying to make a straight up comedy, because the first line of this movie is a joke. And almost every single line by Mr. Freeze is a pun. So as a comedy, this movie is gold. As a serious superhero movie though, it's deplorable. Now I can pick apart this movie, like with these guys having ice skates built into their suits after just finding out about Mr. Freeze's existence, while not having a mask prepared for Poison Ivy, but that's already been done by so many people a long time ago. But what a lot of people don't realize though, is that it's the greatest movie of all time. Without Batman and Robin, we wouldn't have gotten Batman Begins, but more obviously, the first seasons of Game of Thrones. At the end of the movie, Mr. Freeze says winter has come at last, and we all know what happens next. Mr. Freeze started freezing everyone in as much of the world as he was able to, until the dragons Poison Ivy secretly gave birth to grew up. And after Freeze froze half of the world, the dragon made a huge wall separating Freeze, and Ivy spawned a couple of those green people from the show that I forgot the names of. But they snuck into Freeze's side of the wall and turned Freeze into the Night King. And because of very little civilization on the safe side of the wall, humanity turned into the prequel of Game of Thrones, and House of Dragon starts, which leads to Game of Thrones. Batman and Robin is a masterpiece, and if you disagree, you're wrong. Now we're on the Peaky Blinders trilogy, and like Batman and Robin, I have nothing to say about these movies that haven't already been said. Other than the fights being extremely poo. A lot of the fights are zoomed up with a lot of cuts, and sometimes they have really poo lighting. The fights in Batman Forever, although goofy, are shot better than these fights. Other than that, there's nothing I have to say that's already been said. Tommy Shelby Begins is excellent, The Dark Knight is excellent .5, and Alfie Solomon's Rises is excellent. We got too many good Batman movies, so the human race was punished with this movie. Now this movie had a lot of potential, but they started fingering themselves in the wrong direction. Batman kills people, which makes no sense for this interpretation, Martha, and Doomsday. I think that should explain everything. Batman v Superman is mediocre. Now I did like that super beefy suit with the white eyes, and Ben Affleck was a really nice Batman. Anyway, let's take a dive into some poo. No, I'm not watching the theatrical Justice League again. I remember it being poo when I watched it in theaters, so I'm gonna give it a bad. But now the Snyder Cut, that actually isn't bad. The only thing that still sucked though was the poo CGI. And now since this isn't really a Batman movie, I'm not gonna dive deep into this movie, so I'll just give it a good and move on to the Batman. And it's just flames. The intro, the monologue, Batman, Riddler, Catwoman, the Batmobile, the cinematography, the soundtrack, pure flames. And this movie has the best suit without a doubt. It's kinda like a realistic Arkham Knight suit. But I knew this movie was gonna be good after finding out Paul Dano said he couldn't sleep properly after playing the Riddler. And you can tell. The Riddler in this movie was so good, and he's probably my second favorite Batman villain after Heath Ledger as the Joker. He's a Redditor and a Twitch streamer, but unfortunately he does fail to deliver content on the same quality as my channel, and he's not as good of a streamer as Snoop Dogg. So if you want to see some sick content, you're just gonna have to subscribe to the channel right now and join the 4%. But this man is one of the greatest menaces out there, and he's up there with Batman. Batman is introduced in this movie as a menace, and he is definitely the most menacing Batman we've seen. And it also carries over to Bruce Wayne, cause this man is a gamer by day. And I actually grew to like this interpretation of Bruce Wayne being a silent anime character. But also, all the other characters were great as well. And I think what this movie does the best is Catwoman. She has a bigger role in this movie compared to The Dark Knight Rises, and she's nowhere near as goofy as the Batman Returns Catwoman. She's actually a human being, which instantly puts her somewhere in the top 2. But the one thing that I didn't like was the forced romance. It just came out of nowhere and there was no reason for it to be there. And the other thing that was poo was the character. I think you guys know what I'm talking about, but they're in the movie for like a minute. But other than that, all the characters were really good. But something else that this movie does the greatest in not just all the Batman movies, but arguably in all superhero movies, is the cinematography. The movie is shot really well, especially with its fights and choreography. I haven't seen hand-to-hand fight scenes like this in so long. And there's this really cool scene in the dark where Batman's just messing goons up, and the only light you can see is the muzzle flash from the guns when they shoot. That scene was so good. And there's just so many other scenes that were just equally as crazy. But the movie was a great time, and I feel like this trilogy has potential to be greater than the Nolan trilogy with what it revealed. No spoilers in this video, but seeing Bruce Wayne die and handing the torch to Bat Scott and Nightbaby for the next movie can possibly top The Dark Knight. So I'm gonna give the Batman an excellent. But let's just rank the movies from worst to best now. So coming in last place, we got Poostis League, and then next we got Batman 89, then Batman Forever, Batman Returns, Batman v Superman, and the Snyder Cut of Justice League. Now the next 3 can be interchanged, but I'm gonna say The Dark Knight Rises, Batman Begins, and then The Batman. And then in second place we've got The Dark Knight, and in number 1 we've got the best movie of all time, Batman and Robin. Later.